It goes without saying that the past can be a difficult thing to overcome. Spike Spiegel portrays how right and wrong are actually synonymous terms, how the past and the future aren't as far away from each other as we think. Several inspirations can be drawn from his character, but one that stands out the most is his connection to martial artist Bruce Lee. In fact, one of the first scenes in Bebop is Spike practicing Jeet Kune Do, Lee's very own hybrid martial art. It's comprised of 3 aspects: boxing, fencing, Wing Chun, but the main element of the style is the mindset, which is having no particular style at all. Following the philosophy of Bruce Lee, you must be formless, shapeless like water. Spike expresses himself in ways that others might find unconventional. His general approach to a situation is going with the flow. Whatever happens, happens. He's extremely intuitive, finding his way out of the most impossible situations. If he doesn't like the way things are going, he'll take matters into his own hands without any planning prior to doing so. Some people may say this is irrational. I call it realistic, because that's how life works. Life doesn't come with a book saying, hey, this is how you do this. Nah, you gotta figure that shit out. So why is he like this? Well, you'd have to know Spike. In the first episode, you'll see Spike drop a blackened rose. Black roses are commonly associated with death and anarchy. This symbolizes the death of his former self. See, Spike used to be in a criminal syndicate until he met this girl named Julia and he fell in love with her. Okay, here's the problem. Julia was actually the girlfriend of one of his comrades, Vicious, in the syndicate. So basically, he took his bitch. Long story short, he took his bitch, and there's Bebop. Say 26 episodes, have a good night. Nah, chill. But Spike faked his death so he could lead a syndicate and they could start a new life together. Well, Vicious found out, and he made a threat to Julia, saying if she didn't kill Spike, he would kill her. So she went into hiding to protect them both, leaving Spike to live a life of his own. Now, in the same scene, you'll see the rose regain color. This symbolizes promise, hope, and new beginnings. The new beginning for Spike would be the journey of him becoming a bounty hunter and having this weird family vibe with the Bebop crew. No intentions on being rich or famous. He was literally just trying to survive and make it through the day. That's one of the things that intrigued me most about his character. It was already complete when we received him. No childhood memories, no recollection of his parents or friends prior to these events. What Bebop does is take pieces of his personal endeavors with Julia and Vicious and scatter it throughout the series, leaving the rest to lore. And it's easy to mess that up because personally, I'm a big fan of development. You know, like getting a child, seeing them grow up and persevere through their struggle, it just feels more real. Instead of throwing me a character out the blue with no context and having me assume things. I think one big reason why this worked is because Bebop never took itself too serious while still getting the point across. Look at his clothes, his hair, it's wild and all over the place. He doesn't like to be contained, he wants to be free. He could have been a cop, but he chose to be the closest thing to a criminal, a bounty hunter. How come he didn't change his appearance like Hakim did in episode 2 if that was the case? In the opening scene of the Bebop movie, you'll see Spike and Jet prevent a robbery. Turns out there was actually one extra guy outside the information they received in the briefing. The guy comes out, takes the woman hostage, and tells Spike if he doesn't put down his weapon, he'll kill her. Spike's like, okay. The fuck that got to do with me? I'm like, whoa! Cause he really meant that shit. Like the levels of not giving a fuck are so high right now. This is powerful. I feel like this scenario alone explicitly shows, hey, I am not a saint. I'm out here trying to survive. And it further expounds on why he chose to be a bounty hunter instead of being a cop. Cause he's not that dude. He is not trying to play the hero. His confidence intermingles with his apathy, creating someone you really wouldn't want to rely on at all. But at the very least, you can always trust him to take care of himself. This pretty much puts him in an anti-hero category. He's not always like this. More often than not, he actually shows compassion for the people that surround him when they're in harm's way. This just happened to be one of the times where he didn't. Jet is Spike's right hand in the Bebop crew. In a sense, they're like brothers. Jet being the wise and older one, Spike being the young and impulsive. Whenever Spike was about to partake in anything reckless, Jet would tell him how stupid he was, and then Spike would go do it anyway. From time to time, Spike would visit a Native American named Laughing Bull, who provided spiritual guidance. Rarely do I see spirituality in anime explored so openly. Before Spike was able to make his first visit, you'll see Jet speaking in a condescending tone about his insight, questioning Spike's better judgment. Ironically enough, Jet later finds himself in the same circumstance, letting the audience see how Spike was able to alter Jet's perception on spiritual belief. Episode 2, you'll see Spike chasing down a guy named Hakim. Hakim is based on NBA's Kareem Abdul in Bruce Lee's film Game of Death. The interesting thing about this is not only do you see Spike go up against Abdul like Lee, but the movie Game of Death itself is about Lee faking his death, trying to get away from a syndicate, and then coming back, the same way Spike did in Bebop. Fast forward to episode 25, you'll see yet another Bruce Lee reference. This time on a poster that says, The Revenge of the Dragon, which alludes to Return of the Dragon or The Way of the Dragon, where Bruce Lee faces off with Chuck Norris. Now, this episode is like the genesis of Revelation. You know, this is where Spike's past finally starts to catch up with him. Going back to the movie, Spike said that he never felt fear until he met Julia, and once he did, he felt like there was something to keep him attached to this world. In Real Folk Blues, you see Julia die in his arms. The burden is lifted. No matter how much he tried to run away, he had to come to terms with his past. Now, he's in a state of vulnerability. They all were really, because he never opened up the way he did towards the end of the series. He tells Faye about one of his eyes being artificial. Things that Laughing Bull had claimed were starting to come into fruition. Faye desperately tells him not to leave. Jet desperately tells him to do what he wants. Spike knows that these people are attached to him and need him the same way he did Julia, but none of that holds value anymore because he's already dead. This is where the Chuck Norris Bruce Lee illusion comes in. He goes to Vicious and engages in a battle to the death. He honors the conviction of the people he interacts with, whether it be friend or foe. The fight itself was less goal-oriented and more so for atonement of his sins. He wins, but at the cost of his life, following up with a bang. Arguably one of the most sentimental moments in old school anime. You're gonna carry their weight for the rest of your life. Looking at the theme song of the show, The Real Folk Blues by the Seatbelts, you can see a lot of parallels between the verses and the lifestyle he chose to live. He's dissatisfied with his new life with Bebop and also his former life in the Syndicate. And just like good and evil, they are two sides of the same coin. The fact that he's lost, lethargic, and desensitized are key ingredients to justify his self-destructive behavior. I think the biggest downfall to his character was his lack of aspiration. Once he finds Julia, he has a reason to go on, but when he loses her, he wanders around aimlessly, a bit unmotivated. I can't really blame him for that, because one thing about motivation is that it's impossible to fake. At the same time, you have to search for it. And I don't think Spike was necessarily looking. He just happened to cross paths with it, and it just happened to be Julia. That about wraps it up. As you can see, this is my new series, The Undying Mind, where I analyze and delve into the psyche of different anime characters. Feel free to add information as you see fit. Did you like Spike? Did you think he was overrated? If you have any suggestions, just hit me up and I'll see if I can get around to those as well. It's your boy Saya. I'm out.